So this lesson is on scale factor. So scale factor is the ratio of any two corresponding lengths in two similar geometric figures. So really any shapes. So why we have scale factor, or why we use it, is three reasons. One is size transformation. So if it is enlarged or reduced. Two is for scale drawings. So drawing a figure that is larger or smaller than the original. And then three is comparing similar figures. So comparing the ratio of lengths of corresponding sides. So here, comparing similar figures, that is really what we're doing here in our first example. So these are similar polygons. We have a pentagon here and we have a smaller pentagon here. So first, to calculate the scale factor, there's two steps to do. So one, we're going to determine the corresponding sides. Okay, so when we look for corresponding sides, we're looking for at least one of them to have a measurement when we're actually going to do the calculating. So here we have two with measurements and they actually do correspond. So AE corresponds with QU. Okay. Secondly, once we figure out our sides, we need to determine the ratio of these sides. Now there's two ways to write ratio. And the first, we're going to look at, one key thing is you're always looking at the second figure first. Okay, so we look at our second figure and it's 1.2. So we go 1 and 200 and our ratio sign and our first object, 1.5. Now, the other way you can write it is in a fraction. So we have our second figure first over our first figure. And then we take our calculator and we divide this. 1.2 divide 1.5 and it equals 0.8. Okay, this answers 0.8 is our scale factor. Since it is smaller than 1, we know that this is a reduction. Okay, so now let's flip to the back side. We're going to look at two more objects. So here we have two kites. The first one's smaller than the second one. So now we're going to calculate the unknown. So they want us to calculate a specific side. And it is this side right here, Z to Y. So like in our previous example, we need to find the corresponding sides. Okay, so our corresponding sides here are, we have D and A, because there's a number, and they correspond with Z and W. And then here we have D to C, corresponding with our unknown Z to Y. When you are calculating, you always have to have two sets. You can't just find the answer with just the one set. You need something else to compare it to. So now let's do it using our ratios. So remember, we always put the second first. So ZW is 33. And AD, or DA, is 3. And then our next one, we have Z to Y is our unknown, and it corresponds with DC, which is 6. So So now we are looking at this ratio here. Because we have two numbers, we can actually calculate the answer for the scale factor. So remember, if we put them into a fraction, we have 33 over 3. When we divide that, we get 11. Okay, 11 is our scale factor. Now we can use this scale factor to find our unknown. If we're going from 6 to a larger number, we need to multiply it by our scale factor. So 6 times 11 is 66. So our unknown side length is 66. Okay. Also, our scale factor is bigger than 1, larger than 1, so that means that this is an enlargement, which we can tell by the picture. All right. So now we have one more example, and I'm going to show you a different way to calculate this one. So first, we're going to figure out our corresponding sides of this shape. Now, you might notice that these shapes are not facing the same way. So here you have to look a little bit harder. Think of it flipped so you can compare them easily. So first we can look at J to K. And it corresponds with Q to P on here, which is our unknown. Then we have here K to L and Q to R. So they correspond next. K to L and Q to R. The others do not have measurements, so we don't need them in this case. But now, instead of, we're going to do our ratios. And remember, we do our second first. So Q to P is X. And J to K is 10. Q to R is 6. And then K to L is 15. So now we have our ratios. I'm going to show you a trick for calculating. We change them both into fractions. So we have X over 10 equaling 6 over 15. When we have this, they need to be the same scale factor, so the fractions need to equal the same amount. So here, when we do this, we're going to do our fishy. If you have heard of fishy before. So what it is cross multiplying essentially. So we start at the bottom of our tail, we're going across, so we multiply, so we have 10 times 6, and then when we go down the tail, we have to divide. Okay, so we divide by 15. And then in the end, when you put that in your calculator, you equal 4. And that is our unknown. Okay, so this is an easy way to do the exact same thing we did over here. We were finding the scale factor, and then we were multiplying it in the end. So here, we're just taking one little step out. If you like to do it this way, you can do it. If you would rather see the steps and know what you're doing, then you use the first way. All right.